The clinking of silverware against porcelain stopped so abruptly it was as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. My wife Elena's voice, distorted but unmistakable, was suddenly booming through the high-end Bose speakers I'd installed in the ceiling of our dining room, filling the space with words that no mother-in-law should ever hear her daughter say. Elena's face didn't just turn pale, it turned a ghostly, translucent gray, her wineglass hovering inches from her lips as her own recorded moans echoed off the minimalist decor she'd spent months picking out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that Sunday brunch ended with my father-in-law throwing up in the foyer and my marriage ending in a flurry of digital breadcrumbs, I need to take you back to where the rot first started. From the outside, Elena and I were the couple people used as a benchmark. We'd been married for 7 years, living in a beautifully renovated Victorian in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in North Carolina. I'm a structural engineer, she's a high-end interior designer. We had the Saturday morning farmers market routine, the his and hers espresso cups, and a shared calendar that was supposed to keep our lives synchronized. Our friends called us the anchors because we seemed so steady. I believed it. I really did. I remember sitting on our back deck last summer, watching the fireflies, thinking I'd finally beaten the odds. I thought I'd found the one person who would never, ever lie to me. That should have been my first warning, but what came next was so much worse. The first crack didn't look like a crack, it looked like a calculator. It was a Tuesday night around 11 p.m. Elena was in the shower and her phone was sitting on the nightstand. A notification popped up. It wasn't a text or an email. It was just a small, generic icon, a tiny blue square that looked like a math symbol. I didn't think much of it until I noticed she'd started taking her phone into the shower with her. Not just into the bathroom, but sitting it on the ledge behind the curtain, wrapped in a Ziploc bag. If that was all I found, maybe I could have let it go. Maybe I would have convinced myself she just really liked listening to podcasts in the steam. But then came the late-night consultations. Elena started taking on a major project for a client named Marcus. She said he was a tech mogul moving into a penthouse downtown. Suddenly she was gone until 9 or 10 p.m. 3 nights a week. One night, I decided to surprise her. I picked up her favorite Thai food from that little hole-in-the-wall place we loved and drove down to her studio. The lights were off. Her car wasn't in the lot. I called her, and she picked up on the second ring, her voice sounding slightly breathless. She told me she was buried in fabric swatches and couldn't talk. I was standing right in front of her darkened office window when she said it. The pit in my stomach didn't just drop, it dissolved into acid. I realized then that this wasn't just a busy season. I started watching her more closely. I noticed that when she thought I wasn't looking, she would open that calculator app. She'd punch in a long code, and the screen would flicker into a completely different interface. A messaging suite with a dark theme. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a lifestyle. She had a burner app, a secure, encrypted vault designed specifically for people with something to hide. She thought she was being a genius. She thought she was untouchable because the app didn't leave a trace on the phone's standard messaging logs or the cloud.
But she forgot one thing. I'm a structural engineer. I look for the hidden stresses in everything. I didn't try to hack her phone. That's amateur hour. Instead, I went for the weak point in her secure ecosystem. Elena had an old iPad that she used for her design sketches. She'd forgotten that she'd linked the Burner app's desktop extension to that iPad months ago when she first set it up. She'd hidden the app in a folder titled System Utilities on the 4th page of the home screen. I opened it on a rainy Thursday afternoon while she was at the gym. The messages poured in like a flood of filth. There were hundreds of them, thousands. Marcus wasn't a tech mogul. He was a guy she'd met at a wine tasting a year ago. The messages weren't just about cheating. They were about me. They laughed at how clueless I was. They joked about how I was paying for the hotel room she was meeting him in by staying late at my own job to afford our perfect life. I felt the room tilt. My ears started ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out the sound of the rain against the window. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the iPad. But a cold, crystalline rage took over. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but I had to be patient. I spent the next 3 days acting completely normal. I kissed her goodbye. I asked her how her day was. I even helped her pick out the outfit for the big family brunch we were hosting that Sunday. It was a celebration for her parents' 40th anniversary. Both our families were coming, 10 people in total. She had no idea what was coming. She thought she was the lead actress in a play I didn't know we were performing. Sunday morning was beautiful. The sun was streaming through the dining room windows, the smell of bacon and fresh-baked croissants filling the air. Elena was in top form, flitting around in a floral silk dress, playing the part of the doting wife and successful daughter. Her parents, Robert and Martha, were sitting at the head of the table, beaming. My parents were there too, laughing at one of Robert's old stories. I was the one handling the music. I'd spent the morning testing the Bluetooth connection to our whole house audio system. I told Elena I'd put together a special playlist for her parents, a collection of songs from the year they got married. "You're so thoughtful, honey," she said, leaning over to peck me on the cheek. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and betrayal. We were halfway through the meal. The mimosas were flowing. Robert was in the middle of a toast, talking about the importance of trust and building a foundation that lasts a lifetime. I saw Elena smile, a soft, practiced look of modesty. I stood up. "Actually, Robert, before you finish, I have something I want everyone to hear. Elena has been working so hard on a special project lately, and she's been using this new technology to keep everything organized. I thought, since we're all here, I'd share some of the consultations she's been having." Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Her eyes darted to me, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "Dave, what are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone. I'd recorded the audio from the iPad, voice notes she'd sent to Marcus, and recordings of the calls they had through the app's VoIP feature. I'd edited them into a seamless 3-minute track. I hit play. The first 5 seconds were silent. Then the speakers crackled. Elena's voice filled the room. "I told him I'm at the studio, Marcus. He's so stupid, he actually believed I was looking at tile samples. I'm literally sitting in the hotel parking lot right now. God, I can't wait to feel you." The silence in the room wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It felt like the air had turned to lead. Robert's glass stayed frozen in midair. Martha's hand went to her throat. My own mother looked like she'd been slapped.
Elena's face went through a terrifying transformation. First, the confusion. Then, as the next clip played, a particularly graphic description of what she wanted Marcus to do to her. The blood drained from her skin so fast I thought she might faint. She looked like a marble statue of a tragedy. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted to the door, then to her phone on the table, then back to me. "Dave," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Stop it. Turn it off." I didn't turn it off. I leaned back against the sideboard, crossing my arms. I watched her. I watched her hands start to shake so violently that she had to grip the edge of the mahogany table just to stay upright. The audio continued. It played a clip from 2 nights ago. "I don't even care about the anniversary brunch, Marcus. I'll just pretend for a few hours and then I'm all yours. Dave is just a paycheck at this point. A very boring, predictable paycheck." That was the moment Robert broke. He stood up, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. He looked at his daughter like he didn't recognize her. Martha started to sob, a low, broken sound into her napkin. Elena finally found her voice. She screamed, "It's not what it sounds like. That's a prank. Dave, why would you do this? Why would you fake this?" I pulled out the iPad and laid it on the table in front of her father. I'd left the burner app open. The messages scrolled to the most recent ones from that morning. "The calculator app, Elena? Really? You thought a PIN code was enough to hide a whole other life?" She looked at the iPad. She looked at the faces of everyone she'd ever lied to. She knew. She knew there was no way out. There were no excuses left. No, it was just once, or I was lonely. The sheer volume of the evidence, the calculated nature of the burner app, and the audio of her laughing at us, it was an absolute execution of her reputation. She didn't try to cry for sympathy. She didn't try to hug me. She just turned and ran. She bolted out the front door, the heels of her designer shoes clicking frantically on the hardwood, then the porch, then the driveway. A moment later, we heard her car engine roar to life and the screech of tires as she tore away. The brunch was over. The family was shattered. Robert sat back down, buried his face in his hands, and just shook his head. My father walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The aftermath was surprisingly quiet. I had the locks changed by sunset that day.
I'd already consulted a lawyer a week prior, so the papers were served to her at Marcus's apartment, which, as it turns out, was just a dingy studio, not a penthouse, within 48 hours. She tried to call. She tried to send long, rambling emails about finding herself and how stifled she felt in our perfection. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I sold the Victorian house 3 months later. I didn't want the memories, and I certainly didn't want the Bose speakers anymore. Today, I'm living in a loft in the city. It's smaller, simpler, and there are no hidden folders on any devices. People ask me if I'm bitter about what happened at the brunch. They ask if I regret making Elena did. I just provided the speakers so everyone could finally hear the truth. And honestly, the silence that followed was the most peaceful thing I've ever heard.